What's up? Welcome to the podcast. It's me again. I'm sorry to say we had some audio issues this week, and those audio issues were me forgetting to turn the mics on for the first 10 minutes. Now, after that, the audio gets way better. So if the audio is driving you nuts for the first 10 minutes, feel free to skip it. And also, I'm sorry, and we're new at this, and hopefully we'll be getting better. But really, we just started this podcast, and I still don't fully know what I'm doing, to be honest. But this is a great episode with a great friend of mine. His name is Matt. He's another gay pastor's kid, and we went to men's purity group together. So a lot of good stuff there. Great episode. Hope you enjoy it.
Welcome back to the I Tried to Be Straight podcast with Susie and
Nate.
And today we have a very special guest, Gerard Butler.
Sir Gerard Butler has joined us, and he's gay.
I think we were just trying to figure out if that's Russell Crowe or
It's Gerard.
Gerard Butler in 300.
It's Gerard.
You're Gerard.
It's officially Gerard.
I will be flattered.
We will call you that for the remainder of the segment. So this is Matt. We have known each other for about 5 years now. One of the first places we met was men's purity group, where we went to.
Well, I don't know if we actually met there because we did never overlap.
I guess that's actually a good story, which I'll tell in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So at men's purity group, I had this challenge. So it's basically like a porn group, but you go if you're gay, even if you don't have a porn problem, just because you're gay, right? So it's one of this men's group trying to get rid of my stuff, my gayness, and was not having any luck. And they gave me a challenge: go on a date with a girl, or don't come back to men's group. And I was like so in my head about like, I gotta date the right girl. I gotta date the girl who's like got a chance I'm gonna fall in love with. Like there has to be an emotional connection. So I was like, oh my gosh, if this goes wrong, what if I think I'm gay when I'm really not? So I was in my head about it, and I asked the one girl that I like kind of felt like maybe it could be something, and she said no. And then I went into men's group and told them that, and they're like, yeah, you need to like not come back to men's group until you like do this. And then I was just like, yeah, it was kind of a string of events, but I didn't feel like it was really great for me then, and that's when I left. And then a few months later, you joined, and then you started hanging out with my men's group friends.
Yeah.
You wouldn't hang out with me because I wasn't part of men's group anymore.
Yeah, I just, I only wanted to keep hanging with people who were in the group.
So we're gonna keep you pure.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Anyways, so that's how we know each other, and we went to Jesus Culture together and everything. But that's my intro for you. I guess, would you like to get into your story? Could we get your coming out story today?
Sure. My coming out story. I am a pastor's kid, and now a missionary kid.
Whoa.
So
Evolved.
my parents live in Africa full time. They've been there for 6 years. I grew up always going to church, being in youth group, leading worship. Knew I was gay probably by 6th grade. And I have one distinct memory, like walking home from school and being like, making like a real vow, like I'm never gonna tell anybody about this. And so it was just kind of sworn to secrecy. And obviously really wrestled with it, to the point of like, I went to Bible school. My major was pastoral studies.
Classic.
Wow.
And
Just double down.
Yeah, and I was all about it. And I was like, I remember sitting in like my dorm freshman year, and I was like searching, like, help me not be gay or something like that. And there was a ministry that was affiliated with Exodus. Have you guys heard of Exodus?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been hearing about them a lot lately.
And at the time, Exodus had like blown up, and so they were all like rebranding, and I can't remember what it was called. It was Restored Hope Network.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know?
I do.
Yeah.
So there was this Restored Hope Network in my college town, and I like reached out and just thought this is going to be great. And to some extent it was, because it just gave me an opportunity to like be gay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even though it wasn't like I'm being like sexual or doing anything like that, it was my first time walking to a room and being like gay. People know I'm gay, and like being loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though it was like very difficult and damaging in a lot of ways, it was still like healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it was like I was able to be like, a little effeminate or jokey or just like lighthearted about like my sexuality and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So was really hard into that for like 3.5 years. And, you know, to no avail, was still gay.
Yeah.
And I saw people who were like, you know, getting married to women, and that was kind of just the goal. And when we would ask our counselor, he would be like, you'll figure it out like on your wedding night, you know, like just trust God. And that was just kind of like, okay, I guess it's just gonna happen. And there's a few girls that I was like really close with in college, and I was like, well, I guess this is gonna be my wife. And then we kind of move a little bit out of friendship and into like slight romanticism, and I would like freak out and then like, you know, delete block, like completely, you know,
it's a scary feeling.
I was freaked out. After all that, I ended up moving back to Sacramento, where I'm from, and was like just trying to continue the journey of becoming straight or finding wholeness and healing, and started going to JC, found the men's group there, and different approach, but still kind of what I would call like some attempts at like conversing or conversion therapy.
Yeah. It's like a low-key, subtle version.
Yeah. So was really into that for about 1.5 years. Met some great people. But I kind of just felt like this still isn't working. And at the time too, I was coming across like some deconstruction podcasts, like seeing people that I admired, like Eugene Peterson at one point was like, hey, you know, gay people aren't so bad. And I was like, what?
Yeah, you can say that?
And I was like
No one's
shaken to my
stopping
core because I was like, wait, Eugene is like the most Christian person ever.
Absolutely.
So that started to really mess with me. And then I also was reading Richard Rohr.
Oh, I love Richard Rohr.
Yeah. Yes. And funny enough, my conversion therapist was the one who introduced me to Richard Rohr.
No way.
Yeah, he gave me a book and he was like, be careful.
Which one was it?
It was Falling Upward. It wasn't Falling Upward, it was From Adam or something.
Oh, okay.
It's really good.
Yeah.
But he was like, 30% of this is heresy. So be careful. And I was like, whoa.
I can't wait to read that.
And then I just like read it all and I was like, he's way smarter than you are. And I was like, this is like completely melting my heart and like making me so much more open and like falling in love with a God who is like completely ineffable. And like a big Richard Rohr quote was like, you know, he's not, or mystery is what is endlessly knowable.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's like you start dealing with something that like for your entire life and into eternity, you're going to keep having your mind blown with, you know, new revelations, you know?
Yeah.
So that was my gateway drug.
Richard Rohr.
And why did the guy give the book to you if he thought
because he liked Richard Rohr.
He liked the rest of the content.
He liked the stuff that Richard Rohr said that wasn't universalist and wasn't gay affirming.
Yeah. Did he know you were like, well, he knew you were like struggling.
Yeah, it was kind of a poor choice on his.
He goofed.
He should
Well,
have
you did say
highlighted the heresy part.
Or just like, you know,
like just
blotched it out.
Bleeded it out with like a Sharpie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch out. Watch out. You give the gays anything.
Yeah.
And they'll give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yeah.
Gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, I was just, you know, 27 and like still very much struggling and confused. And I think there was just this inner knowing that was like, hey, if you're going to ever come out, or you at least give yourself a chance to like consider coming out, you need to be around people who will love you no matter what. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like I had that here in Sacramento. I didn't feel like I had it where I was going to college. And so I literally, there was like this church in North Carolina and some musicians that I looked up to there that had like a tiny little inn. And I was like, I am just going to move across the country to a place I've never even been.
Wow.
And like restart, you know, give myself like a chance to, you know, sort this all through. And so went there, and then I worked at a restaurant, and for the first time was like around gay people.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, these are just like normal, anxious, depressed, like everybody else.
Yeah.
going through the same struggles of trying to become an adult and live in this like crazy world.
Yeah, like they don't look as different as it's painted as. And I think probably we as gay men avoid other gay men even more because it's like they could tempt us or whatever. But I think Christians in general haven't really interacted with too many gay people. It's like you kind of just look at them and watch from afar.
Totally. Someone said this to me and it always stuck. Is like you can't love or you can't hate what's up close.
Yeah, that's so good.
It's really
So whether people are being intentional about it or not, it's like, well, as long as I keep gay people at a distance, I'm not gonna like fall in love with them or like my heart's not gonna be softened, you know, because relationship changes us.
Yeah.
And my other gateway drugs, the first was Richard Rohr. If you guys know Jedi Jenkins.
I love
Jedi
Jedi
Jenkins.
Wow, you're speaking my
We
language
stand Jedi on the pod.
Jed stands.
But someone was like, he was this guy at my work who was gay. He could tell I was gay and going through it. And he was like, you should read this book. I was like, fine, whatever. And I read his first travel memoir, To Shake the Sleeping Self. And I was like, holy.
Yeah.
Can I swear?
Yeah.
Shit.
Let's go. Let's go. We started swearing on the last one, and so it's a thing now.
Okay.
We swear now.
But I read it and I was just like, first of all, in love with his writing style, but then like he just again was striking something so deep in me that was like it is like what you're actually dealing with in the Bible, like at least in my opinion, like when people are like, well, I just believe the Bible, or like a biblical sexual ethic, and then you're like, wait, the Bible is like full of child marriage, and like women had no say in their relationships. They were basically sold off like property. So when we're talking about a biblical sexual ethic, like what are we talking about? You know, it's not what we're painting it to be nowadays.
Yeah.
And that was the thread that I started pulling, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I feel like my entire life has just been this version of like heteronormativity that's like, I don't even know if that's how you say the word, but
We don't know either, so we're gonna roll with it.
yeah. And that's just kind of been the story. We kind of talked about it last night, but there was this one specific post by Bethel. I was kind of like, you know, I might be gay, I might be not, on the fence, you know, and all my friends were like, hey, well, we will love you anyway. And there was this one social media post that just like set me off, and it was just like this, I wasn't planning on it, but it was like this deep knowing of like, oh, yep, it's happening, I'm coming out.
Yeah. And the post set you off because, and it was a negative post, but how did it set you off to?
It wasn't just, you know, saying, you know, change is possible or whatever. It was saying something like very specific, like being gay leads to a destructive lifestyle. And I was like, here I am, a gay person, like becoming more integrated and more healthy and more whole.
Yeah.
Falling more in love with God, and it's just not a true statement to say, you know?
Yeah.
So I felt like this conviction of like, all right, people love me, people, you know, like when I lead worship, or people like being around me, but as long as I don't say I'm gay, then they don't have to wrestle with this. So I'm like, I'm not gonna give people that luxury anymore.
Dang.
Like, I have to like make them deal with this, you know? So that's as short as I can tell the story.
Okay, so how did it feel getting that copy of Jedi Jenkins and reading, oh my gosh, there's another Christian gay man out there?
It was kind of shocking. Like, I didn't really know that there'd be somebody out there that I would look up to so much, who felt like they had my same story, and also at the same time like had a complex relationship with their parents, but were you know, figured out a way to do relationship really well. So yeah, it was kind of changed everything for me.
That's cool. I imagine, because I remember reading Jedi Jenkins' book too, and I felt like, oh my gosh, there's another person out there. And it felt like at some in some ways that it was just Jedediah and I.
Yeah.
And then you walk into more groups and spaces where that's not the case. And you find, oh my gosh, there are more Christian people like this.
I think, and what's interesting for me is when you're talking about, starting to see more people like this, but then also like Bethel doing that post, and Bethel took this post down, and I'm pretty connected to Bethel as well. I went to their ministry school, and they're, huge music department, like everyone knows them. I think that post revealed more of their perspective towards gay people, and I think that is what changed some things for me as well, because they so clearly don't understand our experience.
100%.
I think that became more and more evident as time went on, and is that kind of what started like taking more boxes? Because even when you were trying to do the right thing, you were trying to be celibate or whatever, or even change, like even for guys that are trying to do that path, and I still know some that are trying to be celibate, like there is an important part that most people would recognize, that you need to accept that part of yourself. You need to accept that you are attracted to the same gender. And if you choose to never act on that, that's your decision. But the stuff that Bethel has said and some other people said in that post, which they took down, is more just like demonizing you for even feeling those things and not even letting you really accept it.
Yeah, it was demonizing you for the feelings, but it was also just kind of erasure. Like it was only holding one side of a very, very small group of people who say they've changed their sexuality, which good for you. Like maybe you're bi or whatever. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't mean that just because you did it or it worked for you, it needs to now be the blueprint for everybody else. And what also just felt so wrong about it, and why I felt this like strong conviction to come out, was that there was people like me that were just completely erased. And like they would come out and maybe their life would become amazing and they'd be happy, and just be like, all right, we're just not going to talk about them anymore. Like they don't exist. We're going to kind of slowly exile them out of our communities. And if we don't literally say you can't come here, we're just going to make it dehumanizing to come. So like, all right, everybody's welcome, but you're not allowed to be on worship team. You're not allowed to do PowerPoint slides. You can't serve communion. Whatever way that just makes you feel like I'm just warming up a chair and you'll take my tithe money, but you won't let me serve. All the while, like, everybody else, even if you do think homosexuality is a sin, like everybody else has all sorts of things that they're struggling with. Like they could be dealing with a lot of greed and gluttony. They could be sleeping with their girlfriends, which hello, every single worship band ever. Like,
it's no secret.
Like, all right, let's have our church. We can't have gay people, but we'll just make the rule you can't have any sort of sexual immorality. All right, I guess worship bands won't exist.
Cool. We'll just kick off half the worship team,
unless the worship won't be able to be up there either. So we'll just all go into an empty room and stare at the wall. Great. Absolutely. All right, let's do it.
And because if the worship leaders are talented enough, then we're gonna keep them no matter what.
Or if they're straight.
Unless they're gay. The worship leaders that are doing all the other things are fine. The gay worship leader, and let's be honest, worship leaders, like gay people are often great musicians. And we have been on many worship teams.
Yes.
I myself and you, we're both worship team people who obviously could not now.
Yeah, and I have had several experiences where it's like, people are like, oh my gosh, we love having you. And then it's like, they find out I'm gay. And then it's like, invite stop. And that was part of my livelihood at one point. And, I get it. Like, if you have that conviction and that's your church that you run, I get it. But what felt so invasive was like, when I came out, it was like, I was pulled in the pastor's office and they're basically like, are you having sex with anybody? And it was like, at the time, I just felt like I had to be, honest to somebody I don't really even have a relationship with. And I was like, well, yeah, like sometimes I do. And it was like, all right, well, we can't have that on stage. And I'm like, okay. And just like later realizing, oh, they have never pulled any straight person into this scenario. And
asked.
And even if they did, they would just be like, all right, well, you should try not to. Or they have this thought like, well, they're going to get married at some point, so then it'll be fine.
It's a double standard, and the questions that are asked Otherwise, it wouldn't be asked. It's those things.
Yeah.
And no one sees it.
Yeah.
Except for us. If
Yeah.
you're in it, they keep it quiet enough.
I'm curious, what was it like growing up as a pastor's kid?
Just in general?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I think my parents are pretty awesome, even though we do find,
awesome.
I try to be like Jed. I really do love my parents and respect the hell out of them. And my dad was not ever sucked into like the mega church world. So it was like small church, grew up, with a lot of people who loved me, you know? And it's funny because like the second person I ever even just whispered, like I struggle with same-sex attraction to, was my youth pastor and his wife at the church that I grew up at. And they were more like progressive, but like closet progressive.
Yeah.
I have so many friends.
Yeah. And they were like, it was like after worship night in Mexico under the stars. And I was just like, I just was crying all week, and people were like, wow, like God's really, and maybe God was, but it was also like, I literally can't hold this secret anymore.
Yeah.
And I just have to tell somebody, and told them, and they made a real point to say like, hey, if you ever decide to be gay, we will still love you. Like you can come to our house and bring your boyfriend. And that like at the time was like amazing, but too much. And it was like, oh, I can't be around these people because
can't support me in this.
I'm going to be gay because they're going to make it okay. So I like at that time would just surround myself with people who were like still encouraging me to not go that way.
Yeah. You put yourself in an environment that won't accept it. That way you don't risk in a moment of weakness allowing yourself to accept it.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Like I've had conversations with my parents since, and I really didn't even have an option. Like, because looking back, it was like, if I would have come out in high school in like the era of Prop 8, for those old enough to remember that.
Yeah.
My parents, that would have been like, you can't live here anymore kind of a thing. It was just, there was no real possibility for me to even explore it as an option, you know?
The loss you would have gone through and the fight you would have gone through wouldn't have been worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard because the struggle and the internal battle of whether it's okay is one thing, but I think we all are going to have a hard road with that if you're in the church, because it's so counter to what you've been taught. You're not taught to think outside the box, right? But going through that process is hard enough when you're on your own out and about, but going through that process in an environment that's going to fight you actively and potentially, make your life a lot harder is so difficult.
It is. Yeah. And I forgot also to mention, like, while I was kind of on the fence and, reading all these books and still going to church and all this and wrestling, like, this wasn't something I ever expected, but like my first intimate encounter with somebody that was like, not just physical, but it was like, we went on a date and like held hands and, did what most people do for the first time, like in 8th grade. Like it was such a powerfully loving experience. And I remember like waking up the next day and just being like, I don't feel bad about that. And I don't feel like God feels bad about that. Like that felt like a beautiful thing. And that was also just kind of like the testimony of like, whoa, everyone's telling me to feel bad. And maybe the only reason I've ever felt bad about that is because of the shame of everyone else, I don't know. I feel like at some point in your relationship with God, like it really does become between you and God. It's like, hey, sure, God, speak to me if this is wrong or whatever. Like, I believe that can be, that could happen. But I'm like, it really did feel like a beautiful experience.
Yeah, I think we weigh a lot of things in the process of coming out. And I think one of them is like, we probably like grapple with theology, grapple with our beliefs, like everything. But then there's also will this feel as horrible as everybody's saying it will feel? Because people do tell you this is going to feel like sin. You're going to feel slimy. You're going to feel gross. And like, cause I like growing up, I would look at things online, like whatever, and I'd feel bad about that. Like, I don't think it's generally healthy to be looking at stuff all the time and whatever. But like, my interaction kissing a man didn't have any of that slime. I'd feel even when looking at stuff online, like it just felt, it's the connection with another person, and both of you feel it, have interest in each other. It's just that human connection did not feel the least bit tainted to me, like I'd been, like it had been described as. It was like a big moment for me as well.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with God or spirituality like now?
I have no problem still identifying as a Christian.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's also such a loaded word, as you know, has become a popular thing to say. But yeah, I don't find myself really ever becoming a agnostic or an atheist, but I just have become so much less concerned about being right and like more concerned about like learning to love myself more and love other people more. And it's kind of crazy anyway. Like at the end of the day, nobody knows. Like we're all like passionately arguing about things that God has purposely hidden from us, and it's kind of silly. So yeah.
Like we are so quick to try and fill in all the gaps in anything mysterious, like anything that we don't understand in the Bible. We're like, well, what's a way we can make this like 100% like unarguable?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's why we have 50,000 denominations.
Totally. And like the Bible itself is people like wrestling through their own experiences with the supernatural, with God. And some people will say something happened and be like, oh, that was God's will. And it's like, well, maybe it wasn't. But I also used to say that at one point. And even the New Testament is like still this crazy, you know, Jesus says like, I am the fulfillment of the law. And it's this totally like earth-shattering, offensive thing to like the Jewish people at the time. And I just think like, wow, do you really think God would just do that one time? And then now us like Hillsong, you know, 2024 mega church evangelicals have perfected Christian spirituality.
Right.
Like, probably not.
Yeah.
This is the epitome of Christian spirituality, and it looks like that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So I think that's just silly.
Yeah.
But I like the Bible because in and of itself, like it's, you know, constantly building on itself and like, you know, getting to the heart of the matter, and also finding like God is still working through every kind of crazy person imaginable. So why couldn't he work through a gay person? Those are my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I feel like I've often struggled with like, is this wrong? Like, oh my gosh, what if this is wrong? What if this is wrong? And I was talking to my friend and she was like, she's deconstructed. She's not really a Christian anymore. And she was like, Susie, she was like, I don't really know if I can speak into this because of my own faith. But she's like, I would just err on like, God is a loving God. Yeah. Like, I'd rather get to the end of my life and be like, God is loving. And if I was wrong, I was wrong. But I lived my life in accordance to God's openness and gentleness and kindness. And like that coming from her, I was like, that's so true. Like, I would rather live my life in accordance to that. And I mean, you read the Gospels, you read the good news, and I'm just like, there's just so much goodness and grace there. And how do we keep overlooking it in one people group? Like,
totally.
What?
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
And the people group that's also like the most marginalized and also going through attack from all sorts of people.
Yeah. One thing that, shout out to my boyfriend, John Mark, says, what it is, what's at stake? Like, he had somebody, one of his mentors, when he was really wrestling with his sexuality and spirituality, like sit down and be like, all right, you're asking all these questions, but really, I think what you're asking is, am I loved? And
that's so good.
That's kind of what everyone's asking, you know, and wants to know.
Yeah.
And when you're going through all this stuff, like really you need to figure out what's at stake. And for me, what was at stake was my eternal salvation or going to heaven or going to hell.
Yeah.
And when I pulled that all apart and realized what I'm actually wanting to know is, am I loved? Then it became like, oh, I'm not trying to, like, any choice in my life, I am not going to make out of fear from a God who is mysterious. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, like, a lot of evangelicalism is a picture of a God with a gun to your head saying, or else. Like, and that's, like, honestly the most, like, up kind of relationship you could ever have with anybody. And so when I got rid of that kind of relationship, I was like, oh, like, and realizing, am I loved? Yes. And of course there are really unhealthy ways to explore your sexuality and really unhealthy ways to date people or whatever. But that's just part of the maturing process and the growing process.
Yeah. And
evangelicals are so afraid of, like, well, if we're all just going to heaven and, you know, there's, you know, like, what's the point, you know? And it's like, that's kind of crazy, but you really have to strip it back and realize, like, if that's been your whole motivation, then it's an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Back to Richard Ord, but I love that he says religion is for people who are scared to go to hell, and spirituality are for people who have been through hell. And I'm like, that is, like, so good.
Yeah.
Like, to the motivation to not go to hell. Like, how do we act here on earth? And like you said, I don't think that sexual, what is it? Promiscuity. Yeah, that it is. I know English. Like, that is not just for the queer community. That is expressed through heterosexual people.
100%.
A lot. I mean, like, sex trafficking, like, there's just all these crazy things where it's like, it's not just a thing in the gay community.
No.
It's in our churches. I've sat with pastors who are addicted to porn. Like, it's just, like, it's not a queer problem. It's a people problem.
It's a people problem. And, like, honestly, they're like, everybody has issues. People are always going to have issues. Like, this spiritual journey, there's never a point. Like, one of my big problems with Bethel these days, I don't even know if they preach this anymore, but I know at one point they would be like, we all get to a point where we don't sin anymore, you know? And, like, I first of all just don't think that's even the point, because, like, when you're looking at what sin even is, it's just missing the mark. And yeah, maybe you're not, like, hooking up with other people or, you know, stealing or whatever the big sins are, but maybe you miss the mark with, like, loving your partner, or miss the mark with something at work or whatever. It's like, when you feel like you get to this point where, like, I am, like, this perfect being, it's like, well, then you no longer need God, and you're not Hummel, and ew, gross. I don't want to be around you.
Yeah. No, anyone that thinks they're perfect, like, even if you don't think you're sinning, you're probably sinning with ways you don't realize, you know, in your thought life and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, pride is a sin.
I know this might be, like, it might be heretical to say.
Oh, let's go.
But, like, at least people's picture of God in the Old Testament, like, we have stories of God in the Old Testament changing his mind, bursting into anger and fury. And, like, I don't know, there's something kind of humanizing about that I'm like, even God, like, could miss the mark.
Yeah.
So to speak. Like, I'm probably going to be canceled for that.
Well, like, no, I mean, Old Testament especially, like, there's contradictions, and people are just like, well, it's like, God's always one way. And it's like, well, God did, like, drown a lot of people in a flood, and you can have different ways of putting that. But, like, there are contradictory things in those verses, and, like, everybody just wants to make everything, like, so, like, boiled down and so, like, palatable Christian beliefs that we take away the stuff that's a little bit complicated or nuanced. And it's like, I think we should, like, own everything if we're going to own some of it. And if you are going to stand rock hard on certain things, but then just pretend other things don't matter, that should be talked about.
I was talking about this with our friend, Ben and Becky, last night. I think you were in the room too, but I was like, yeah, Jesus, like, sure, there's some things he said on sexuality and commented on like morality. Yeah, a few things. But he wasn't as crystal clear on that as he was about wealth and greed and loving the marginalized. Like, I don't remember there being a place in the Bible where it said, Jesus said, it's harder for a gay person to get in the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to get through the eye of a needle.
Huh, weird. Weird.
And I don't know about you, but any big evangelical mega church or like big prophetic person is like walking in their Gucci and like repping their Balenciaga, like the pointlessly expensive like garbage. That's like, I think the guy you're talking about had a lot to say about that.
Yep.
Pretty explicitly.
Yeah. I mean, the church right now, there's so much money in it. And there's so much political stuff in it, like the several $1 million spent in the Super Bowl ads, which I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. Like, I'm not like here to talk about that, but like, there's so much need in this country right now.
Yeah.
And there are so many churches that are just building a bigger building. And it's like, well, you're just pooping on the gays, shitting on the gays. We're cussing today. Well, you're just shitting on the gays. Like, there are millions of people that the Bible kind of told you to feed, and you are taking 10% of people's incomes and you're not feeding the widows and the orphans. And I know that's not every church, but like, if you spent half the energy you did on talking about the gays as you did trying to like think of creative solutions to feed people, there'd be a lot less hungry people in this country.
I agree.
Do you guys feel like the temperature around LGBTQ is changing in the church for the better, or do you guys think it's getting worse?
I definitely think toward LGBT people it is. I think most people nowadays, like even the big, like, dare I speak her name, Jackie Hill Perry. Like,
oh man,
sorry,
we always get added.
But even those kinds of people who are like the leading voices in like ex-gaydom or whatever would say like, yeah, I'm still gay, or I'm still like, like I'm still attracted to like this, my same gender, but I'm not acting on it. And I think like even the bigger churches, maybe even Jesus culture nowadays, maybe not, but a lot of bigger churches are kind of like, yeah, gay people are gay. Maybe they'll find, a spouse of the opposite sex, or they'll just be single. My parents have kind of come into that, I think, like less about change and more about being single.
Yeah.
But I do think like trans people or non-binary people are like the most like hot button issue of our time right now.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my God, this poor tiny sliver
like
of humanity,
0.5%
is like being completely like bombarded by mainstream Christianity.
It's interesting because it does feel like gay people became a harder target because we are becoming more humanized. Bit
More
by
of
bit.
us are coming out.
Yeah.
Like,
people, your brothers, your aunts, etc. So it's harder to demonize us.
Yes.
It is funny that like it does feel,
And everybody likes Queer Eye.
yeah, we're becoming,
We love queer.
we have spread the gay agenda far enough that now we are being accepted. We did it.
Yeah.
Kind of. No, a little bit. But I will say with that thing, like, why do they need a scapegoat so bad? Like, why, as soon as we got accepted on some level, they instantly started like really demonizing? Because if you're not paying attention, and I'm not like super like for one party, I'd say I lean more liberal, but gay is one of the biggest talking points. It was like one of the biggest political points in the 2000s. And then I feel like they weren't able to use it as much. And now there's still something that can be used, and that is the T.
Yeah.
And it's hard watching another group because like obviously that's not me, but like I can relate to so many parts of that journey of just people not listening to you, not speaking for yourself, everybody telling you everything about your journey, and no one listening to what you're saying about your journey.
Yeah.
Like we can relate to that in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I think on the whole, there is like a push towards some more acceptance. It's hard for me though to imagine, just because I'm like, I don't know, like, I don't even know what it would be like to just live in the world and be like loved and accepted as, so like
Yeah.
it still
Yeah.
feels impossible in some ways.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, more and more people like who are respected in Christendom, like Eugene Peterson. Beth Moore, I feel like, is like the next one.
Oh my gosh,
like,
I think so too.
she's kind of like lurching in the corner. Like I think she'll come out at some point to be like affirming.
Was it Andy Stanley that also said something?
I don't know.
He said something along the lines of like, he was talking to his heterosexual congregants and was basically like, the gay people that come every weekend, like they're the ones that you should be more like.
Yeah.
He got a lot of backlash.
One? Or
I totally forget what church.
I remember seeing that clip.
But yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was really powerful.
I guess that in my own little circle changed a lot of people's minds because they
Wow.
were like, whoa, like Andy Stanley said that.
Yeah.
But caused a lot of waves there.
Yeah,
too.
he probably lost some people, but
Yeah. No, it's crazy because like you guys and a lot of other gay Christian or like spiritually gay people that I know, like there's just something so much richer about their faith because it has been something that's been so
Yes.
deeply, deeply wrestled with.
Yep.
I think like, you know, in Judaism, in at least I've heard, this could be wrong, but I know there's like parts of the Bible that they like don't read until they're like 40.
Whoa.
You know,
interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because they're like, until you've lived some life, you really shouldn't be dealing with this kind of stuff.
Interesting.
And I think some of these metaphors that we come across, whether it's literal or not, like stories in the Old Testament, it's like, yeah, I don't think kids need to really be wrestling with like these gigantically existential, like this material, like,
Yeah.
The flood of the earth.
Yeah.
yeah. Which I'm like, surely these ancient texts, like there is value. I mean, they've stuck around this long.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's value to like dig through them and see what kind of, you know, things they relate to today. But I don't think it's things that we need to necessarily like be like exposing like 11-year-old kids to like,
Yeah.
you know, make them feel terrible and like burst into tears and like have this way too emotional of experience like
Yeah.
before they're ready.
Absolutely. Like thinking about hell when you're like 6 or
Yeah.
7 years old. That was my life.
Oh yeah, me
Like hearing about this guy that God wanted him to kill his son.
Yeah.
Hearing that when I'm 7,
Yeah.
I'm like, what if God wants my parents to murder me on an
Yeah.
altar and he doesn't cancel it last minute? And they like, would they? And like in the Bible, you're like, this guy's awesome because he would kill his son when God told him to kill his son. And I'm like, oh no, Mom, Dad, what is this? Could this go down sometime? We need to clarify.
Did you guys like lie awake at night and just like try to just like pray and pray and pray and pray, like God forgive me, like over and over until you fell asleep because you're
yeah.
like, what if I have like a sinful dream or
Yeah.
like there's something I forgot to ask for forgiveness for and then I die in my sleep and then hell forever.
They say you're going to hell forever.
I mean, literally, I remember being like, and it's like to the point where you're old enough where you probably shouldn't be scared of this, but like 15, 16 years old, scared that the rapture was going to happen. And I did something so awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know about that, but I remember coming home from school and being like, and really, I would bike to school, bike home, and when there weren't a ton of cars out, I would start getting scared getting home because I was like, oh my gosh, the rapture happened,
Yep.
and surely I'm still here because I sinned. I did something awful.
The rapture's a crazy concept.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, I think all that stuff, like what we're witnessing and like, I guess like the mass exodus in churches is like kind of just everything's been built on that foundation.
Yeah.
And as people are like pulling that apart, they're like, okay, well, there's no reason for me to go to church or there's no reason for me to read my Bible or whatever. Like, and we're seeing this big shift, but I think like as the whole of like the Western world, like is just outliving their lives without like maybe a church home or a spiritual practice. Like they're going to realize at some point, like, oh, this is still really beautiful to meet with the same group of people and live life together and like encourage each other through difficult things and, you know, wrestle through different texts in the Bible and maybe pull out some deep wisdom that we couldn't on our own.
Yeah.
And like having all that's probably the good thing, regardless of like eternal damnation or the rapture,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I do think like the church eventually will become like a really cool thing again.
Yeah.
But it'll just be way less cult-like, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't know.
People can think.
I
That's
do have
okay.
a question, because you strike me as someone who's done a lot of inner healing. And
Think about that. No.
I mean, just like the
Have you
fact
not?
that
That's some, yeah.
Okay.
that you can talk about the church and your faith so openly and gently, and then also know that your parents might not fully be on board,
Yeah.
but love them so
Yep.
deeply and well, and respect them, honor them.
Mhm.
That just takes a lot of, from my experience, just knowing like that takes a lot of work and a lot of heavy lifting. So I'm curious to know, what have you done to get there?
Man, I think a lot of the books that I've read, like Jedi, like Richard Rohr, Kate Bowler, there's some like really well-educated, deeply spiritual, Jesus-loving people out there who like have had harder things in their life than being gay.
Yeah.
And like, not to say that it hasn't been incredibly difficult, like being a gay Christian in this world, but you know, reading different people's stories about, you know, walking through like cancer, or
Yeah.
maybe they are gay and their family completely rejected them. Like that's never happened to me. Like all things considered, like my family loves me and, you know, will always be there in my life. So that's kind of been a pretty amazing practice, is just to like read other people's stories, like as much as I love also reading gay stories, like reading people who just, you know, maybe from another part of the world or culture who lived through crazy circumstances. That's really helpful. Because it helps me to not just hyper focus on myself and consider myself like the most persecuted person.
Yeah.
And also like it has been really healing being in a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
Not that you should get in a relationship.
How long has that been now?
Almost 3 years.
Yeah.
But
awesome.
not that you should do that like to get healthy, because that's really could be totally
different
toxic.
problem. Yeah.
But like just like being in something that I never thought was possible, and being able to walk through life with somebody who has had similar experiences, and just like, it's crazy, but just having like physical touch every day is like an incredibly healing thing, you know, and something the church has tried to like keep from me, you know? And I'm like, wow, being able to like lay with somebody on the couch and watch a movie is incredibly healing and grounding and like embodying, you know?
Yeah.
So, life in my mid-20s was just so incredibly chaotic as I was trying to figure this all out. And like now I'm in a good career and things have just kind of fallen into place to where I'm like no longer in survival mode, and I'm just like living a
That's huge.
quote unquote more normal life. And it's like I've no longer dependent on my parents supporting me, you know, so that has helped our relationship, because I'm not like, you know, walking on eggshells because they could, you know, cancel my phone bill or something. And yeah, so I guess those are a few things.
That's great. I think it's good for you to say like the physical touch aspect is like beyond the sex part,
Yeah.
because I
Oh
think
my
that's
gosh.
what the church gets hung up on a lot.
Oh my gosh,
and
yes.
It's like way beyond that. It's like even like this is just so nice when you're having a hard day.
It really
and it's coming
is.
from the person.
It really is. That was one thing at men's group that I really loved, which like to listeners, this would sound insane, but like we would do this thing that was like hug the other person longer than it's comfortable. And so like maybe a little cringy, but like you'd like go up to this stranger and literally just embrace each other. And like the pros in the room would be like, I'm comfortable with this for like 5 minutes. So you would just stand there for like 10 minutes.
Just a a 10-minute hug.
Yeah.
holding each other.
That kind of
Yeah.
sounds nice.
It's really nice. No, there was things about men's group that I'm like, no, that was legit.
yeah.
Well, that's a great thing. It was not going to turn you straight, but it will make you feel better. It will like help with that because like, yeah, when you're gay, you're not getting any of those physical needs met forever.
Yeah.
And so like even a friend having that connection is still huge.
Yeah, and
You're so deprived.
yeah.
We're so deprived.
We are, and we are physical beings. Like,
Yeah.
we are not like people. Like, there's so many sects of Christianity that are so disembodied,
Yeah.
and like, let us just be alone in my prayer closet. Let me just fast and like, detach myself from worldly things. It's like, okay, maybe for like a season that can be really helpful and help
Yeah.
you push through something, but like being embodied and having physical touch and eating good food that's like, nourishing for you is like a spiritual practice. Like,
Yeah.
it helps integrate you,
A lot of wisdom here today.
Yeah. Dude, I didn't expect you to bring like, getting to hear your story, but like you're bringing a lot of like really good stuff.
Fire.
Oh, thanks.
You're a smart
I've
one,
been-
Matthew.
Well, I've been around a lot of great people
Yeah.
who some are problematic, but like I've still been able to like, not throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah, that's
Separate
it,
the
yeah.
wheat from the chaff.
Try and take
Yeah.
the good things and like,
Yeah.
like, unfortunately there are some really amazing gay hating evangelicals out there.
Yeah.
There are.
There's a lot of
It
bathwater.
sucks.
There's a lot of
There
bathwater out
It
there.
sucks, but it's
Not
true.
a lot of babies, but a lot of bathwater. It's like an ocean of bathwater, and there's a few babies in there. It's really
Yeah.
hard not to throw them out. But we're gonna save the babies.
Yeah. And like, when you asked me to be on the podcast, I was kind of like, oh gosh, I don't want to like be online. But then I was just like, okay, like if I could help one person,
Yeah.
who's out there struggling, who's like where I was, like, I want to pay it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
What would you say to that one person? Did I
to
say
that one person,
that's great. That's what I was gonna say.
you are loved, whether you are gay or straight. Whether, like, I remember I was listening to your episode and it's like, when people are so conflicted and fearful and working through all that stuff, just wherever you come to in your own timing, you are loved.
Yeah. It's crazy how you don't feel that.
You don't.
You don't feel that you're gonna be loved when it goes down. If you do the wrong thing, if you come out, you feel like you might lose it from God, family, friends. This is the fear you're going through.
Yeah, it's huge. It's incredibly difficult, but
There's a pain that not only, like, don't want to like,
yeah,
reserve it, but pastors' kids, we have to process this because it's our life, our world is church. And there is, to come out on the other side of this, still like be a Christian on some level, have gone through all of this and still have that softness, that like, to figure this out, it's difficult.
yeah,
And I think there's a weight you carry because you have thought about all of it. You're not just kind of like living on the outside, living on the edge. You're like, you're in it still. You're in all of it. You're thinking about everything you've learned before, everything you learn now, and still have a soft heart, and you're carrying that all with you. And it shows, you feel it on you.
Okay, so I figured out who else you look like.
okay.
Do you
Hype
ever
them
watch
up all day. You just love hyping.
Grey's Anatomy?
No.
Oh,
You
which
look like
guy?
McSteamy.
Oh.
Does he?
McSteamy?
Wait, it's McSteamy, not McDreamy?
Ooh.
No.
Is McDreamy? There's a McDreamy and a McSteamy
Yes,
on Grey's. I need
but
to watch
you're-
this show.
You're McSteamy.
Whoa.
You can be
I'll have to look him
McDreamy.
up.
Can I be McDreamy?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only person that really I got consistently at one point in high school was Adam Lambert.
Oh, no. Really?
I don't see that
I mean, your
one.
eyes are pretty bright, but that's about it.
I had like a rounder face, and I had my hair more like him at the time, and he wasn't totally
Dyed
like
black?
Yeah, like
Oh, you had dyed black hair?
no, just like our hair length, and there's some pictures I'll show you. Be like, oh, I can kind of see it, like in high school. But wow,
Love that
thanks.
for you. Congrats. Yeah, you're hyping us all up. You're so pretty, by the way. I don't say that enough.
You're sweet.
You look so good.
It's true.
Yeah.
Me saying stop.
Yeah.
really
now you-
comfortable with that.
see, it's awkward when someone hypes you up. Just when you're in film, you're like, do I look cocky and say thank you, or do I just say no, I'm ugly and look humble? I don't know. It's very confusing.
Yeah. Now I'm like, I mean, we always have lots to talk about, but now
Yeah.
I'm like, now I want to interview you.
I know.
But I know
we do need more Susie.
That could be after.
I do feel like we could just hang out and do more podcasts because I feel like we could just talk. And also, you have a lot to say on this. It's crazy you haven't said anything before. We get the first Matt scoop. We're very lucky. You have so much. You have so much to say.
The Kiki.
We do.
Kiki T.
Should be honored.
But I guess that's it.
Yeah, we kind of derailed a little.
I feel like we didn't know. I think we railed exactly where we wanted to. I think the rails was already set out.
We have
just
12-year-olds listening here.
Well, not anymore. This is. Were we bleeping? Or are we bleeping? We're not bleeping. We'll be fine. We railed exactly the rail. We found the rail, and we had to find it.
Yeah.
I've never found it. To lose something, you would have to find it, and that's why you're here. You're keeping us on track, and I am chaos, and I've accepted it.
You're not chaos.
Thanks.
Should we close it out?
I think we should close it out, but Matt should close it out.
Yeah, Matt, close us out.
This is I tried to be straight. Find us on
the socials.
Socials. Find us on the socials.
And yeah. Be a wonderful, loving gay person or straight person or
ally,
trans person.
We have a lot of allies listening.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you guys see that there was a comment of some mom that was like, "This is really good for our mama's heart to see," and I was like, "That is so sweet."
Yeah, keep up the comments. Thank you so much, guys. That's been really cool. But yeah, well, I guess that's it.
Sweet.
Closing out. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Next, me and Nate and Susie signing out.